crisis. Pakistanis remember Benazir Bhutto. Bhutto's party meets today to try to regroup, and the government looks set to postpone the coming election. For more on today's meeting of the Pakistan People's Party, we're joined by Aisha Khan. She's a lawyer and political columnist based in London and an opponent of the Musharraf regime. Aisha, I just want to ask what your sense is of today's meeting. What's the expected outcome of it?
Well, basically the PPP, which is Benazir Bhutto's party, is meeting to discuss two main points. The first one is the succession issue, which is crucial, and the PPP has just been thrust into this. Nobody really expected Benazir Bhutto to die so suddenly and tragically, and as a result of that, they need to urgently figure out who's going to lead the party in the future. So that's the first thing, is succession. The second thing they need to figure out is what their approach will be vis-a-vis the elections. As you know, in our previous discussions, I've mentioned to you that a lot of parties in Pakistan were calling for a boycott. The civil society was also eager on a boycott, but Ms. Bhutto had decided to go through with the elections. Now, in the aftermath of her death, her party is trying to reassess the situation and figure out whether they are going to go ahead with the elections or not. It appears, however, that elections will not go ahead on the scheduled January 8 date. They will be postponed, and that makes sense in terms of just even if you look at the emotional trauma that everyone's gone through, specifically her own party. It would be unfair to ask them to go through an electoral exercise on January 8. Even culturally in Pakistan, when somebody dies, it's expected that the family will be in mourning for 40 days. So I personally don't see elections happening before that 40-day period. I heard from some sources in Pakistan early this morning that they're looking now at the second week of March, in which case I think probably what might happen is the caretaker setup will also be reassessed, perhaps a caretaker setup that is more acceptable to all the political parties might be put in place, and the elections may become a bit more free and fair, and perhaps all the parties can then participate.
Okay, so we're looking at a couple of months then delay on the vote. Just want to get back to your point about succession for the PPP. It's been known that Bhutto was essentially the only leader of that party. So given that, in your estimation, who would be the likely successor then? I know we'll probably find out in the next little while, but in your mind, who could it be?
Yeah, the PPP is meeting today to discuss just that point. As I said, they have just been thrust into this. There's been no preparation for this whatsoever. As far as I know, Benazir Bhutto, when she had all these threats on her life, she apparently wrote a last will and testament. And in that will, she also made some indication of who she would want her successor to be. Her son, Bilawal, who is only 19 years old, he's her eldest child, will be reading out the will today. In fact, I think he's already read it out in the party meeting, but that's been behind closed doors, so the media is not aware of what the contents of that will were. In Pakistan, there is speculation that this could go a couple of different ways. Historically, in Pakistan, political parties have been quite dynastic in their approach, and it's all in the family, if you will. It's either a brother or a child or a spouse that kind of inherits the leadership. Although the culture is changing, and I don't know if the people will be that happy with that kind of an arrangement in this day and age. Historically, that's how it's been with not just the PPP, but all other political parties as well. So given that, and given the fact that Bhuttos have been plagued with death and tragedy, I mean, now the only surviving sibling of Benazir is her sister, who has been very apolitical. It is believed she is not interested at all, but I also understand that a lot of people are trying to force this upon her and asking her to step into Benazir's shoes, at least as a stopgap interim measure. I don't know if she will agree to that or not, because she has historically been very, very apolitical. In fact, for the past nearly 3 decades, she has lived in London and completely disassociated herself with the family politics. The other option, if you look within the family, is her husband, who is quite tame tainted in a sense, because there have been huge corruption allegations against him while Benazir was in power. Her son is obviously too young. He's 19. He's just a freshman at Oxford. And the other option is a man called Amin Fahim, who has been a very close deputy. He's been the vice chairman while Benazir was in exile for the last 10 years. He's been managing the day-to-day affairs of the party, but under very close scrutiny. Benazir was handling a lot of matters out of Dubai, and she had been giving him constant instruction. It is widely also believed that neither Amin Fahim nor Benazir's husband Asif Zardari have any sort of charisma to match that of Ms. Bhutto. However, there is also a fourth option, and that is Mr. Aitazaz Ehsan, who is been a long-time PPP member. He is a member of the Central Executive Committee as well. He is nationally recognized. He, although of course nobody can fill the void that Ms. Bhutto has left, but he brings many other things to the table. He is not marred by corruption. He is in fact very well respected all over Pakistan, especially recently in his role with the Chief Justice. He was lead counsel in reinstating the Chief Justice in July. He has huge following in Pakistan, but within the party it is believed that some people resent his popularity, and also in her last days Ms. Bhutto and he were not seeing eye to eye on everything. But I think what we might see is somebody in the family taking over, at least in the interim, but in the months to come, maybe in 6 to 8 months from now perhaps, there might be a reassessment, and also this will be maybe an evolving situation which may change as time goes on. I know a lot of people who want to see a modern face to Pakistani politics are very for Mr. Aitazaz Ehsan taking over.
Well, it's certainly something that the international community is watching very closely. Aisha Khan, as always, very much appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Taliban made a deadly strike on a security convoy in Afghanistan, killing 8 people. Militants fired rockets